Hi, everyone, and welcome to Heal Endometriosis Naturally with Wendy K. Laidlaw. Wendy has spent the last 2 years helping women with various stages of endometriosis to heal naturally after putting her condition into remission. After her own healing success from stage 4 endometriosis and adenomyosis, she's inspired to heal others, and her goal is to help some of the 175 million women know that there is another way other than painkillers, drugs, or surgery. This is the place to be for real talk with real people for real results, so you can learn how to heal your endometriosis naturally. Please note that the opinions expressed in this program may represent options, but are not a substitute for proper medical care. Before starting any new healthcare program, we recommend you consult with a health professional.
Hey everyone, it's Wendy K. Laidlaw here with this week's podcast called Family Values. Now, I thought I would share this podcast with you because you're going to get a little bit of insider info and a sort of my secrets that I view towards what makes a really happy human, and especially if you've given birth to a little happy human, how to keep them happy and nurtured and growing and developing in a nice, healthy, emotional way, as well as they're growing older as well. So I got interviewed by David and Odalys Hart, and they're a beautiful young couple with lovely energy. And what I particularly liked about them was that they're doing this podcast ahead of having any children themselves. And, you know, it's such a great idea to even consider doing something like this, because it can have such a positive outlook on their children, and they're not even born yet, and they can prepare and anticipate for the future ahead of even having children themselves. So I hope you enjoy listening to this podcast. As always, if you need any help and support, don't hesitate to reach out to us, but I hope you enjoy listening to this podcast, and remember to please subscribe and rate, and you can now even review me as well. I hope you'll give me a good review and enjoy the content of this podcast.
Today on the show, we have Wendy Laidlaw. Welcome, Miss Wendy. Now, Wendy is the founder of Heal Endometriosis Naturally and Endo Boss. She educates women on how to put their endometriosis into remission across the globe, and also runs a training school for endometriosis health coaches. She has 2 grown children, and since falling pregnant, she's had a deep interest in psychology. And honestly, we could not have asked for a better guest this week, because she has an honors degree and a diploma in psychotherapy in what brings out the best in a child. So welcome, Wendy. We're really excited to have you on today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
For sure. Yeah. So right before we dive into everything, can you just give our listeners out there a little backstory about yourself?
Sure. Well, hey everyone, it's great to be here. And I think the subject of children has always deeply fascinated me, and families and things, and how to bring out the best in people. So it's awesome that you're doing what you're doing. I mean, my background in my business now, where I'm at, kind of resulted because I'd had endometriosis for 33 years, fell ill due to chronic stress and whatever else, overworking. And then I ended up bedridden for about 3 years. So I was, the doctors washed their hands of me after 6 surgeries. And I was pretty much near total organ failure. I was very, very ill. I had multiple other conditions: adenomyosis, fibromyalgia, mitochondrial dysfunction, you name it. I had a list of symptoms. So they washed their hands of me and were kind of like, no, we can't do anything more. So I was pretty much so from my children's perspective, I felt the worst mother on the planet. I just felt so awful. But I kind of recognized I was being forced to think outside the box. So that's when my journey began on nutritional therapy, and then it led into psychology, psychotherapy. And I really wanted to figure out what was happening in my body that it wasn't healing, because our bodies are always supposed to be able to heal. That's just what we do. Right. I mean, you cut your finger, you can't consciously stop that healing process. Yes. It does it all by itself. So so basically my journey began from this end. I was in property and had my own real estate business and stuff before, but this kind of took me on this pathway. I started to track my journey in a journal, noting what was working, what wasn't working. And then at the end of it, I had this book, because I thought, I don't want any other woman to have to suffer in the way that I did, because a lot of people seem to think that pain with your monthly cycle is normal, and it's not. So this kind of led me to kind of write, it's not normal. Your grandmothers, your great grandmothers say, oh, that's just part of being a woman, dear. It's not. Pain with a period is not normal. I'll talk more about that later.
Oh, I was going to say, I need more information about that 100%.
You absolutely do, because most women think that's normal. It's not. So again, we're all conditioned. We're all brought up that way. And then, of course, when things get really bad and you end up in hospital or A&E, or you've got cysts and fibroids and everything else, then invariably it takes women about 8 to 10 years to get a diagnosis of endometriosis. Wow. And sadly, they open them up to give them a diagnosis. So they're already inflamed and in pain. And I know that seems a good idea. Let's cut you open and cause more pain and more inflammation, just to confirm probably what you already know. So my drive was, I was so ill, so alone, so lost. I mean, I still struggle to believe I was chronically disabled and bedridden for so long. It just, my head was like, get up, do something, don't just lie here. Whereas my body was like, nope, we're on strike. Figure this whole thing out. Right. So as a result of that, I'm here today. And now I help women all over the world identify the root causes and what I call the 5 Ps, or the 5 poisons. So produce, food, products, property, past, and people. So it's a pain in the body in any way, shape, or form is the body's way of trying to communicate to you. So our job is to try and, I've got my prop here, get a magnifying glass out, and really put everything under the microscope and kind of go, so why is my body trying to speak to me, and what is it trying to say? So that's kind of led me to this point. And it's amazing. I've taken women, again, who've been bedridden, women on varying stages of pain or going to bedridden, and taken them, guided them, helped them empower themselves. And that's where they become a boss of their endometriosis, or a boss of their body, and they become an endoboss, because that's the ultimate. And it's not just about the physical healing, it's the emotional healing. Hence why it kind of led me into the psychology and psychotherapy, because I'm fascinated about the brain-body connection, what makes us who we are. And then it leads back beautifully to children. And, children are just these little blank slates, little sort of, they say, I think in the first 7 years, we're just wandering around in a semi-hypnotic state, just absorbing everything in our environment. So as we become adults, we then can reflect back to our own upbringing and kind of say, well, what worked, what didn't work? What was functional? What was okay? And, what would I do differently? So it's great to be here.
Wow. That's awesome.
I'm great. Yes.
I'm really excited and unfortunate, of course, that you had to go through that, but I believe that everything happens for a reason. And, the amount of people that you were able to help because of that, is tremendous. So So we're about to go ahead and dive in. One of the things that we were talking about before, is that I know that you had mentioned that your daughter is a primary school teacher, and how you as a family, you guys have regular conversations about encouraging the development of confidence in kids. So we're going to be diving a little bit more into that today, as long as your story about endometriosis and all that stuff. So are you ready?
It's my favorite subject of psychology. What makes humans who we are? I mean, literally. I mean, it's my passion. So.
Awesome. Love it. All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. All right.
So when did you decide it was the right time for you to have kids?
Well, interestingly enough, I was told, because I was diagnosed with endometriosis when I was about 15, and I was told I'd never have children because things were so bad. So it's a long story, but the short version is I fell pregnant, and I had a threatened miscarriage, but I managed to have her and then my children are sort of 9 years apart. So they're little blessings. I was told I'd never have any, and I had them. And then as soon as I fell pregnant, I read everything. I came from quite a dysfunctional family. My parents were pretty, unpleasant. You can't, you can choose your friends. You can't choose your family. It's so true. Mm-hmm. And then society conditions us to say, but you must love them even if they're not particularly nice, and, you try. But I knew that my upbringing was dysfunctional. I knew I had to do something different. So I read books like Hot House Kids and how to, when I was pregnant, I had speakers on my abdomen, and I was playing classical music, and I was speaking to my baby, and I was like, like when I was hoovering, I'm going, this is a Hoover. And literally I became obsessed with, because when you have children yourself, you tend to can't help but go back to your own upbringing and pull from that experience. But if your own experience hasn't been great, you're kind of like, I was terrified. It's like, oh my God, what happens if I mess her up? So when I had her, it was terrifying, and I was on my own. I didn't have a relationship with my mother, sadly, and so I had to kind of learn through books. And 27 years ago, there wasn't the internet. So I became an avid reader of the power of positive parenting, hot house kids, literally how to, from a very early age, how to speak to children,
Mhm.
and a lot of people will say, like, don't pick up that balloon, or don't pick up that. So that the instruction to the child's brain is pick up that balloon, don't. So it was encouraging me to go, so keep your hands away from that object, or to stop and slow my thinking down, to therefore communicate with my children in a way that actually was almost, I view them as little adults, but I spoke to them in very kind of simple language, but in the positive rather than in the negative. That felt very important to me from a very early stage, even when they were pre-verbal. So up to the age of 2, they don't have language. So, being really mindful and conscious of how I engage with them to get the best, that whole recognition and reward. Babies strive for it and grown men die for it, recognition. So very early on, I was kind of like engaging with them and like, yay, even if they didn't understand, praising the good behavior. Because what you find is a lot of parents only give their kids attention when they're doing something naughty or what they don't want them to do. But actually, if you can give them praise and recognition and attention when they're doing something great, like sitting, coloring in and being super good, you're like, wow, you're amazing, you're sitting so brilliantly. Funnily enough, they want to do more of that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's so funny because that kind of links to
how we teach karate.
I was about to say that, just how we teach martial arts. It's it's not going, hey, don't move around so much. It's going, hey, can you show me how a black belt sits down? Or, oh my gosh, look at that person right next to you doing such a great job. And it makes the kids like, hey, wait a second, I want to do that a little bit.
Absolutely. And it's so powerful. I mean, even as adults, we can't help but respond to that nice, good behavior, stuff like,
for sure.
Oh, you're doing really well. You're like that, get that validation of what you need. So
and it makes a lot of sense. When you focus on, the positives that they're doing, that they're going to do more of that. Because it's really, what you focus on, that's what they're going to do a little bit more of, whether or not you realize what you're doing is either helping or hurting.
Yeah. And we try
to that's where I think it's important to get into the know and really understand. And that's where you tune back into your own self. If you get to know who you are and what motivated you and what lifted you up, and what I call, like, if you had a believing mirror in your life, somebody that reflected back to you your good aspects, your good points. Yeah. Look at Oprah Winfrey and Tony Robbins. These people have achieved great heights. Yeah. But look at their upbringing and look at their, the tragedy and the abuse that they suffered. Yeah. But they each had just one person that believed in them. Yeah. So I think, if someone can just be that believing mirror for you, and even as a parent, you have someone reflecting back, look, you're doing a great job. You're doing the best you can. I can't remember. I don't know if it was Maslow, the psychologist, that said, you just have to be a good enough mother. You don't have to be the most perfect mother. I'm kind of in the throes of writing, I've got a couple of books on the go, but how to be a perfectly imperfect parent, I think really kind of like, demonstrates my psychology about being a parent. Unless you get the handbook on how to be the best parent in the world, you're pulling from your past experiences, so you do the best you can. And then if you realize what didn't work, then really focusing on the positive can have a tremendous impact on children. That's why my daughter, she's amazing. We sit around the table, we discuss. She teaches 5 and 6-year-olds. Yeah. And it's like, oh, this is a challenge. We've got a behavioral issue here. We've got ADHD here. We've got whatever. How can we engage this child in a way? Because ultimately, at the core of every human, they want to be loved. They want to be noticed. They want to pay attention. I mean, it's basic things. Yes. And then when you can recognize that and then focus, as I say, on what they are doing well, it's like a seed. You plant a seed in the soil, good, nutritious soil. You give it water, you give it sunlight, it grows. It's like the human spirit. It's like a child. You give it the right environment, it can't help but grow. Yeah. Happy, complete human.
One time, I think I was on Facebook and I was watching just Facebook videos and things like that. And I came across a video of Will Smith talking about like his parenting and how he became, how he just got into his kind of parenting style. And so he adopted, I want to say it's called like the gardener method, which is, when your children are born, they're a seed. And so just like a flower, that flower is already in that seed. It's just your job as a gardener to make sure that you provide the environment for it to be able to grow. Totally. You're not going to force it to be a flower that it's not.
Of course. And I think as well, what's really sad is when you see some parents, they denounce responsibility of their child onto authorities or onto other people. Well, she's not my problem. Because you see it in schools, and like, actually, you are responsible. I hate to point this out to you, not that I would say that, but
Yes.
you know, I feel it, you know, and my daughter's amazing because she's got my passion and my insight as well as her own, you know, being in the front line, working with kids and just seeing what they respond to.
Mm-hmm.
So we get all excited on the dinner table and like, okay, what about this? Because it's engaging right brain. A lot of the education system is left brain.
Yes.
So it's trying to do the bridge left and right brain, engage, get enthusiasm and help them really start to see what they feel and they respond to in their seed of growth.
For sure. And that that kind of positivity, and then just kind of, you know, thinking about how can we make it better? How can we help? Because I know you said as you were growing up, it wasn't necessarily the greatest, or, you know, and things like that. And once you got pregnant, you read all these books. So what kind of values did you really want to make sure that you instilled in your kids?
Well, right from the beginning, it was honesty.
Mm.
Honesty that I would say, I've not been a mum to a girl before. I've not been a mum before was what I used to say to my daughter. Like, I've not been a mum before. I had a pretty dysfunctional upbringing, so I'm going to do the best I can. I'm not always going to get it right, but I'm going to be trying my best.
Yeah.
And I'm reading and I'm learning and I'm educating. So what I need you to do as she got older and was able to communicate with me is say, you know, what works and what doesn't work. I mean, I have open dialogue with my children, you know, because they're people, even when they were 2 and 5 and 8, they're little people with their own opinions. So I would encourage them to spar with me and debate with me and discuss with me and challenge me within reason, obviously, because sometimes it was annoying and I'm just like, just do as I say. But, you know, but no, I think honesty of who I was, that I wasn't perfect. I wanted to be the best mom. I realized I could be a good enough mom, and that was good enough for them.
Yeah.
And I think honesty at the core. And again, when my son was born and he was old enough to understand, I'd say, look, I've been a mom to a girl before, but I've not been a mom to a boy before. This is the first time. So again, and my children really are grounded. You know, they've got a good sense of who they are. You know, and that was important to me because I didn't have that. I was insecure and perhaps codependent and I got so ill and kind of, you know, didn't have a sense of who I was. And I think as a parent, that to me is our duty to help our children get a sense of their own identity. And it might be different from us. It might be. There might be aspects, and we want to encourage that, like the seed. We want to water it and we want to give it lots of sunlight and say, hey, you know, what's going to be coming from you? Yeah. So that's what I think honesty is one of the, and a lot of people struggle with that, I think, because they like want to appear like, no, I'm perfect. I'm the parent. I've got it all sorted, when they're like crumbling underneath. Yeah. And I think children, you know, appreciate that, from my opinion anyway.
And I think, sorry. Thanks. I was going to say, you know, because you said that your kids are very grounded and they really know who they are. And I think that stems a lot from you being honest about, you know, your parenting and going, hey, I'm not perfect. And I, like you said, I'm going to try my best and doing that versus, you know, putting on that facade of like, you have to be perfect. And I think that's kind of what sends kids in that spiral of, okay, well, let me not tell them that I messed up, because then it's going to mess up, you know, that facade that we put on. So that's
well it's funny that you mentioned Will Smith, because I don't know if you saw the recent Red Table Talk with Jada.
With Jada,
with Demi Moore and her daughters and their daughters, and interestingly, it was Demi Moore's daughter had turned around to Demi Moore and said, you used to tell me, Mom, that you loved me, but I knew you didn't love yourself. So because you didn't love yourself, how could I love myself? And it was really striking. I wrote a podcast. I did a podcast recently and wrote a blog on it called This is Empowerment. And I talk about it in there, you know, because we might, and this is what I tried to put this veneer on. I tried to put this like, mummy's trying to do the best she can and mummy's okay, but inside I just wasn't. And I was trying to, the kids would say, are you okay, Mom? I'm like, yes, I'm fine. But clearly their instincts and their senses could pick up that I wasn't, you know, or things weren't okay. So it was really striking to hear Demi Moore's daughter say that, because we have to kind of look at ourselves as parents to be the believing mirrors for our children, because our children see us completely for who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. You know, so, and as you were raising your kids, I know you wanted to instill honesty and other values, but, you know, what kind of challenges did you face on the way as you were raising your kids?
Well, I think obviously when they start interacting with other people, their friends and their peers may have different ideas about things. So I would always stop whatever I was doing. If like there was come home from school or there was a situation, I kind of thought, my parents never had any time for me. I was a lock key kid, I just, just come in on my own. And they never listened, they never paid attention. So I made a pact with myself when my children were born. I would, you could tell when they were in distress or upset or something had gone wrong, and you just thought, right, stop everything, get on your knees, chat if they were little, be at the same level as them, chat to them and say, tell me all about it. I remember my son being called into school, and my son has supposedly hit another boy, or he'd been up a tree, or I don't know what the full in, but I was not very happy.
Yes.
So I go into school and I'm like, okay, first of all, Sebastian, I want you to sit and tell me in your own words what happened, and then I'll hear what the teacher's saying. And so again, it's kind of allowing him the opportunity to be heard. But certainly if there was because not often everyone's that sincere or honest, like sometimes there was things happen to my children, and some people have taken advantage of their good nature. So obviously you can't help but being lioness towards your children. At the same time, I expect them to have certain morals and principles, for their own behavior and take responsibility, Right. But yeah, so some of the challenges were, if they had quite strong opinions on something because everybody else was doing it, or all their friends, which is that blanket statement that means two people. So what I would get them to do, which always diffused it, was to get them to write. So for example, my daughter wanted to go to some party, and I didn't like the person who was having the party. I knew that the parents wouldn't be there, and she was about maybe 15 or 16. So I said, well, why don't you go and write a list of pros and cons? You know how I think, because there was no point in having a debate or discussion about at this point. So I was like, go and write your list of pros and cons for going to the party, not going to the party type thing, or sort of the pros and cons to going. And it's so funny because she went away to her room. She's 15 or 16. So in prime, tell me what to do, don't tell me what to do. In prime kind of like came back and went, I'm not going to the party. And it was fantastic because she realized that the people she was going to go and associate with weren't the type of people that were going to look out for her, have her back. And so I didn't have to say a thing. It was awesome because she knew at the end of the day, all I care about is her. I want her to be happy. I want her to go and have fun. But it isn't a sort of blanket, you can go and do whatever you want. You have to live with the consequences. So getting them to go and take stock, pay attention. When there were challenging times, we would stop, sit, we'd talk about it. Even now as they're older, if there's things, I say, could you go and please write about it and come back and talk to me? Because once the steam is out of it, or once that hot energy's removed, then you can bring in your prefrontal cortex and have your thinking brain rather than your emotional brain.
And that's such a cool way. I mean, I've never even thought of that. I mean, obviously I'm not a parent, so maybe I haven't had a chance to think about it, but that is really cool, having them, you go and do your pros and cons list, and then you come back and talk to me, because it does allow them, that freedom of, okay, let me decide what I think is best, versus, us just going, okay, you have to do this because I said so.
Right.
Exactly, which I know, I mean, that would rile me, somebody dictating to me at that age. So I've always encouraged them to take responsibility, even when they were little. So what do you think, Sebastian? And what do you think, Maxine? What feels good for you? And even if they didn't have the expansive language, putting it back to them at a young age, which helps them take responsibility and even just expand their thinking more than anything else.
For sure. That's cool. That's awesome.
I love it.
Yeah, I was going to say, add that to our to-do for parenting. And so I know that we were talking before about your endometriosis, how you had suffered from that from when you were 15. You were told you're probably not going to have kids. You ended up, having kids, but then you still kind of had to deal with it throughout, that parenting journey. So what kind of struggles were happening on the inside that nobody really got to see when it came to, you being sick and bedridden and all those things?
Well, I think you just learn to mask it. You learn to, that you're probably going to have maybe 2 weeks in the month where you're just going to be in writhing in pain, but you're just going to have to suck it up and keep going. I would go to my work with a hot water bottle literally strapped onto my abdomen because I had to keep going. I didn't have a choice to stop. So you kind of learn that you have a very high pain threshold. And you just have to. I wasn't very good. I've had to. I think ended up being bedridden. As you said earlier on, I believe everything happens for a reason. Right. I realized that I'd adopted coping mechanisms and ways of being in the world that were to mask perhaps my pain of my upbringing. Yeah. I knew then when I was in bed, I have to think outside the box. I have to do something differently. And it's
Yeah.
not just the physical. There's more going on deep in the subconscious. I knew I needed to, I had like PTSD. I had to go and get EMDR. I had to do all these kind of things to help me manage the emotional, which again, I'd put kind of endometriosis and adenomyosis into remission, but I had this dreadful chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
So I was still bedridden. So I'm like, I don't understand this. So the pain's not there anymore, but how come literally I can barely function? And I got blood tests done at the time.
Yeah.
And showing the mitochondria score. Your mitochondria are like little battery packs in your cells that, you know,
powerhouse of the
bring
cell.
it.
The one thing I learned at school.
Oxygen, nutrition, and
oh my gosh, I used it.
Yeah. And then I got tested on by this doctor in Wales who got this amazing test that can show the energy function of a cell, of the mitochondria in the cell. And she says that normally a healthy person has a mitochondria score of 300. You need 70 score for your organs to function effectively. But my mitochondria score was at 15. So I was almost near total organ failure. You know, had no energy. So having to deal with that and trying, you know, I obviously felt so sad I couldn't go to their hockey or their rugby or their
I was going to ask how it kind of affected your parenting in that sense, you know, being bedridden. You know, I'm sure that, I don't know if you've, just kind of how did that go? How did you feel having to go through that?
It was awful. I felt a complete failure as a parent, a failure as a person. Here I was, I'm like this, but my brain, my head's going, come on, you stupid body, get up and get out and do, but it just wasn't happening. And I think what I did do, again, going back to the honesty thing, was I was just really honest with my children along the way, you know, just like, this is my intentions. This is my vision and my mission. I don't know quite what's going on. It's probably below my level of consciousness. There's stuff that I need to do. So I explained it as if like, and that was quite vulnerable and quite scary, because you kind of hope you're doing the right thing. And it wasn't like me feeling sorry for myself or me being, you know, helpless or powerless. I was just kind of like, look, my brain and my will wants me to get back up and just go, but there's obviously stuff going on, and I'm reading this and I'm doing that. And this is where the fascination, my son's about to go off to university and study psychology, you know, so we're a family of kind of, I would say, emotional scientists. You know, I really get fascinated about what makes us tick and who we are. But of course it was tough. It was awful. Obviously there was times as well when I really considered, like, would my family be better off if I wasn't around, you know? You go to that kind of dark place, because at that point the doctors were pretty much saying I was a hypochondriac and washed their hands of me. And I was like, do you genuinely think when I was a little girl that I thought, when I grow up, I want to be in high levels of chronic pain and debilitated and stuck in bed and have no social life and not be able to leave the front door? You know, it was so angering to me. But I use that energy to kind of like, just kind of, there has to be another way. There has to be another way. And I share that with my children on the way, and they've got a great philosophy of life now. They you know, I think again, my son's, I'm doing the second edition of my book, and I've got him doing some, I've got both my children working for me at the moment. They're just awesome. They're so much better than I expected. Obviously I give him praise, but not too much. And like, he's reading my book, because of course he's 18 and he's never actually read my book. You know, I wrote it 5 years ago. He's like, wow, Mom, I had no idea. I mean, he did have an idea, but not to the depths, because I kept it surface level. I didn't want to worry them. I didn't want them like not sleeping at night, things like that. At the same time, I'm like, I have to be the lighthouse for you. I have to be like the leading light of, like, there has to be another way. Life's thrown this boomerang at me. I just got to throw it right back and like pull from it and move forward. So of course it was tough. It was challenging. I try to always be a positive person and focus on, like, what is this situation teaching me right now? What am I learning from this? Which was, I had to change. I had to learn to go back to deal with some of the past so that I could move forward in a different way. You know, I had to shed the skin of the old me and kind of step into the new me type thing. So,
and I mean, I just commend you for having the honesty to be able to talk to your kids about that, because I know that's not something that is easy. I mean, you know, when it comes to flaws, you barely want to admit it to yourself, let alone other people, let alone these people that you know are looking up to you. So.
Oh, it's hard. Yeah. I felt like a complete failure. At the same time, I always had I just had this faith and this belief that there was a greater purpose for all of this. I couldn't see it. I didn't know what it was. pray, meditate, all that kind of stuff. And it would always come back. So I'm like, what's my purpose? I remember I was going to go, I had some improvement, and I thought, right, I'm going to go back to my old business. I'm going to resurface my old clients. And I fell down these metal stairs in my back garden and broke 3 ribs and almost ripped my spleen.
Oh
and
my
I thought,
gosh.
is that a sign that I don't go back? I think that's a sign.
That might be.
So I was kind of like, okay. And then I pray and I meditate, and it's like endometriosis. And I'm like, but I put it in remission. Do I have to go back? And then I recognized that, of course, because of the journey that I'd been on, I knew I had to write a book on it, just of everything that I learned, because I remember being in bed going, is there not some book somewhere with everything that you need to know? And that was my drive. My drive was, if I can only help one woman, then everything that I've been through has been worth it to save her from what I've gone through. So I've yet to meet someone who's been as sick as me or as ill as me or in that condition as me. So I feel blessed in that regard. And I know about 80% or so of women get relief and able to put it in remission just from reading my book.
Oh, wow.
And about the other 20%, they can apply to work with me, and I've got online programs.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to ask you about your book here in a few minutes, because I want to know more about that. But
I think you need to read more about it, especially because you might not have a name for the pain. You see.
Yeah. Because I mean, not to TMI my listeners out there, but sometimes when the time of the month comes, like if I don't catch it soon enough, where I take my Midol or what have you, I physically cannot walk. I mean, David has seen me just writhing and like.
No, that's not normal. That is not normal.
And it's pretty random kind of, and I say random, but sometimes it would be really easy and just take a couple Midols and she's fine, she's functional. But sometimes it's like, well, she's bedridden for 2 days.
Yeah.
No matter what she takes, it's kind of knocks
can you imagine like having like a 2 to 3 day period that's like a non-event with like no clots, no flooding, no pain? Can you imagine that? Because that's what it's supposed to be like.
Would love that. I want to cry thinking about that. That'd be wow. Okay. So we're gonna.
Well, this is where you get into the know, you see, and this is why I wanted to write my book. And I'm not here just plugging my book, but this is why I wanted to write this and say, look, read it. See if it relates to you. I give you some of my story and a step-by-step guide of what worked for me. Yeah. So I used to get really annoyed when people would write books and then how do I do that? So that's why I put everything in my book. And then as I say, there's kind of 5 elements to what might be causing the pain. So there might be stuff going on subconsciously, midbrain, reptilian brain, that are way beyond your level of consciousness.
Yeah.
So again, that might be enough, or there might be more requirements, need to look a bit deeper, and so that you don't end up like I did.
Yes.
Where I was just stubbornly like, no, I'm fine. And then clearly it wasn't
me. I'm like, I'll be fine. Just leave me alone. I'll be good. I'll get through it. I'm good.
No, but then but women are not meant to suffer.
Yeah.
Not meant to suffer. And this is where the empowerment, this is where the real boss comes in. This is where being an endoboss and empowerment, when we talk about female empowerment, is like, you can, just with a couple of tweaks, invariably for a lot of women, just a couple of tweaks can make a gigantic difference. And of course, even when you do have children and you have a daughter, again, my daughter has like 0 pain. She was like showing early signs that she would have endometriosis. My mother had endometriosis. So I've been able to short circuit the ancestral line of that as well, so.
That is really interesting, honestly. I'm gonna, I'm getting distracted because my mind is being blown. So once again, we're going to dive a little more into that book in just a few minutes. I was wondering, as we're kind of talking along, jumping into some more positive notes, I want to know, what do you think was one of your biggest parenting goals that you achieved through this entire kind of journey up until this point? Because I know, kids are always your kids, no matter if they're 400 years old. So
I think it's them liking themselves. It's them feeling content with who they are, even when they were little. And their peers had this toy, or their peers were doing that thing, or their peers were being nasty or bullying, or there was other stuff going on. It's just, I felt like all I wanted them to do was to feel that that they were okay as who they were, and that they give them the language, because sometimes children don't know the language. We have to teach them the language and teach them. so because I got this kaleidoscope of, I do this program called Embracing Emotions, Empathy and Energy. And it's about really embracing your emotions, embracing your energy, embracing your empathy. And we have like over 100 different types of emotions. Wow. Most people think it's like 2 or 3, happy, sad, or depressed, whatever, but actually it's teaching my children, that, are you feeling this, or how, or maybe you might be feeling, so getting them comfortable with their feeling states, getting them comfortable with who they are, so that whatever life throws at them, that they have got that solid core, that soul connection with who they are, their core. So I feel, that who they are as humans, that was always really important to me, that they're not arrogant, they're not big-headed, they're not cocky, they're really grounded, they've got a great sense of core of who they are. So that felt really important to me, because we've got no idea. Look at the corona crisis, we've got no idea what life's going to throw at us, but it's not what life throws at us, it's how we handle that, and that always felt really important.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I always believe that, no matter what life throws at you, you can only control 2 things, and that's your attitude and that's your actions.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So, Miss Wendy, as we're wrapping up and everything, really we wanted to know is, if you could go back in time and give yourself just your number 1 piece of parenting advice, what would it be?
Not worry so much. And just be a bit more confident, I think, as a parent. I was always trying to be like the perfect parent and trying to get it right, and not trying to get it wrong. That maybe I didn't relax enough. Maybe if I could go back, it would be maybe have more fun with them. Because I think that's the thing as humans, when you do have children and responsibilities, you forget how to have fun, which is one of the things I actually, as part of my program, encourage women to learn how to have fun and play and be creative again. So that's one thing. I mean, I do oil paintings and things now, huge big canvases and all that kind of stuff. And my children are like my greatest, supporters, and they love it. So I wish I'd made more time to do just nondescript things, because I'm sort of classic entrepreneur where I'm like, oh, I've got to do this and I've got to do that and I've got to do this. So I wish I'd had a little bit more time just to sit and play with them. I always tried to make the time for them when things went wrong, but with that I was always busy. So so that's kind of what I would say, is have more fun with them, I think.
That's cool.
And I think even for me, that's really powerful advice, because I'm an, entrepreneur. Workaholic, entrepreneur by heart. Yeah. And it's always like, what's the next thing? What can we do to help people? What can we do? And being able to.
Yeah, I'm the one of the 2 of us who has to be like, hey, we've been working for like 12 hours at this point. Do you want to maybe take a break? Is that okay?
So I do take that advice to heart. That's, something that when we do have kids in the near future, it's something that I'm going to be conscious about, just as life's getting busy and going on, is to breathe, take some time, have fun, make sure that the kids are having a good experience with you, even if you have all this stuff going on.
Exactly. And I would encourage you, stick it in the calendar. Like, my thing is, if it's in the calendar with my kids, like my daughter has her apartment about half an hour from here, and she's in my calendar so that nothing else can interfere with my time. So I'm disciplined. So we have our M&M night where we have our chat and our Chinese and whatever, and that is in the calendar so that nothing else can interfere. And even if you are working, as I say, I've got my children working with me now. It's awesome because like we're engaging in a different capacity and we actually have fun. So I kind of, I make sure they're in the calendar so we do have fun, and I make sure that, they're on board with my mission and my journey. So they're part of, as an entrepreneur, get them invested, get them, part of that passion. And there's nothing more fantastic when your kids are got that same passion and drive as you. That just fills you up even more.
Yeah, you hit David in the feels. I saw it.
Yeah.
So if parents could take one action item from our conversation and be able to apply it today, what advice would you give them? What would the action item be?
I mean, if they're coming from a good intention and they've maybe not had a great upbringing themselves, is to be really kind on themselves. And I would encourage one simple thing, but it's incredibly powerful and a thing that a lot of the most successful people in history, in alive, dead, that have done, is to journal every morning upon awakening. When you wake up in the morning, is to journal, because it's a great way to build up that self-reflection.
Yeah.
So as not to beat yourself up, because as much as we would hate to admit it, children will become little minions of us growing up. No matter what we say, don't be like me, don't do this, do that. It's not don't do as I do as I say. Kids will mirror everything. So, and I think, you know, if you really do care about your kids, you have to care about yourself first, because going back to Demi Moore's daughter, right back, she said, my mom kept telling me that she loved me, but I knew she didn't love herself. And it gives me goosebumps even now that her daughter couldn't love herself completely because her mother didn't. So we owe it to ourselves as mothers in particular. Obviously fathers, it's important too. But if the mother doesn't love herself completely and honestly at her core, it will come through. You know, and that's, as it's giving me goosebumps, because I know that that's at the core of old me. I didn't like myself. I didn't love myself. I felt there was something dysfunctional with me. And that was the saddest thing. Whereas I was putting so much positivity and things into my children, but they could see, you know, they're really sharp, intelligent little things when they're wee. They just seem to know, you know. So that would be, to journal in the mornings, very, very powerful as you wake up, because it's a different you that wakes up in the morning. It's a very vulnerable you. You tap into yourself, and you get a chance to reflect on yourself, reflect on the previous day, reflect on what you're going to be doing for that day. It sets up the day, but it also helps you explore relationships, or explore maybe your parenting style, or maybe if things didn't go right yesterday, or you had a little irritation with them, or whatever. It allows you just to process it. There's a lot of stuff that we do in life stays stuck in our head, and it just becomes layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, and we don't really know what's at the core. So I think children live by example of how we live. And both my children journal every morning, and they love it. Obviously, there was that bucking and I don't want to do it. And I'm like, fine. That's fine if you don't want to grow anymore. That's fine if you don't want to fully connect with yourself and recognize what's going on underneath. That's fine. And then they're
like, okay, give me the journal.
No, but then they were coming to me going like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, I know. It's amazing, because, you know, if there is any emotional struggles or things going on internally, it's a great way for parents. So that's what would be my parting words, is pick up a journal, just write what's going on in your head. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Just go, wake up in the morning going, oh my goodness, what a rubbish night's sleep I had. Why is this woman suggesting that I journal? I've got no idea what I'm going to write. I mean, literally the flow of thought goes onto that paper, and you'll just open up this gateway to yourself that you just be so amazed at.
Yeah, absolutely love it.
I'm gonna start journaling now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's something that we do need to add into our schedule in the morning, because we have a lot going on, and I feel like that would absolutely help us. I would say be less stressed, peel back the layers, and be able to make sense of things, you know, just day by day, instead of, oh, that was a terrible month. You know? So
especially as an entrepreneur in this journey, as well as being a parent, you know, there's a lot of fear and worry, and you have to look at the core of what it is that's driving you. What is it at the core that, you know, where are you headed, and what are you doing with your time, and why are you doing what you're doing? And it's a great, you know, it's its own form of self-therapy.
Absolutely.
Really, really powerful.
Yeah. So, and of course, we always encourage, Ms. Wendy, all of our guests to promote anything they feel our listeners would benefit from. So I know we were discussing your book a little bit as well. So can you give our listeners a little bit more information about your book?
Sure. Well, whether they've got endometriosis or not, I've just started my book, How to Be the Perfectly Imperfect Parent, because I think there's so many parents out there that kind of, you know, worry and fret, and they're trying to do the best thing and don't get enough recognition from what they're doing. But at the moment, I mean, and I've got another couple of endometriosis books coming out. So if there's any woman out there that has any form of pain with her period, that is not normal. And it may be, you may have early endometriosis. We don't know, but a good thing to do is to read the book, and then you'll get a sense of whether you connect or relate to what's going on in there. And even, well, there's a couple of things that you can try. I mean, there's so many things there that are just simple things that you can swap out, that you can look at. You can become, you know, a boss of your body and really understand what's at the core. I even offer a free paperback book. So there's a free book plus shipping offers. You just have to pay the shipping and handling. Right. And I ship all over the world. So my book is Heal Endometriosis Naturally Without Painkillers, Drugs, or Surgery. It's available on Amazon. In fact, I went #1 Amazon bestseller last month. So that was very exciting, all organically as well. So that was super, because again, I've had, through my program, we've had 19 babies from 17 women who were told that they were infertile and couldn't have babies.
Wow,
So
I just got goosebumps. That's awesome.
so it's amazing. Just again, it's all about, I use this phrase called AIEIE, awareness, information, education, inspiration, empowerment. You know, whether it's coming to your body, whether it's being a good enough parent, it's all about increasing your awareness, getting the information, education, getting the inspiration, and then you're empowered. You know, then you don't fret and worry and feel anxious.
That's awesome. Well, I'm excited to read that book. For anybody else who wants to go find that book, you can actually go to healendometriosisnaturallybook.com. And to learn more about our awesome, wonderful Wendy, you can go to healendometriosisnaturally.com. Wendy, we just want to say thank you again for joining us on our Family Values podcast, where we keep unlocking these parenting secrets.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me on. It's been great chatting to you.
Thanks for listening to Heal Endometriosis Naturally with Wendy K. Laidlaw. And I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and rate us. If you're interested in learning more, you can download your top 5 jumpstart tips at healendometriosisnaturally.com and jump on the VIP email list. Remember to keep you number one. The world needs a healthy you.